Yeah, I could say that at this point as well, based on what Amir stated, that these talks, if you haven't attended them before, they are recorded, and so they could be viewed afterwards by people on you. They would be accessible through the web page, and they will be possible to view afterwards for those who don't have the time or possibility to attend. But that also means that you will be, if you have a camera on, you will be seen, and if you are asking questions and so on. So we will inform you about that, and that you accept. If you do not accept to be part of the recording, I'm afraid you'll have to shut the camera and be quiet. Otherwise, and your name will still appear if you have entered your name. But I hope that everybody agrees upon that you're part of the recording, and that you accept that you're part of it as it is. Okay, I think that we actually need to start up. We are a couple of minutes after 1 o'clock Central European time, at least for us here in Sweden. And I would like to welcome you all to this webinar today, this STARS talk. This is actually the 23rd in a row of STARS talks that we have held in the STARS EU European University Alliance through the years that we have been founded, and that we have worked together in this alliance of 9 partners. The STARS talks are given by different people connected or in collaboration with the alliance, people working at the partner university or working in collaboration with the alliance in different formats. And it's to show about the knowledge and the activities that we actually are doing, and to learn more about what we are doing and what kind of competencies and knowledge that we have within the alliance, and also foster interactivity and collaboration between the partners, and also between partners and external actors in society, as we as an alliance have a focus on regional development and how we could support the surrounding society in what we are doing at the partner universities. Today, we're very honored to have Professor Amir Haj-Bolouri as the speaker for this talk. The title is Immersive Learning Environments, Virtual Reality, Augmented Reality, and Mixed Reality. And Professor Haj-Bolouri will share his knowledge and competence based on what he's doing on several different research projects within the field, but also knowledge created elsewhere. As always, when it comes to these talks, we have a presentation for 30 up to 40 minutes by the presenter, and afterwards there's a possibility of interaction and dialogue and discussion between the participant, but not least to the presenter. And I am most confident that we will have some very interesting information shared by Professor Haj-Bolouri. And by that, I'll give the floor to you, Amir. Please share a little bit on the content that you will talk about on immersive learning environments. Please.
Thank you very much. I'm just going to share my slides. Do you see them?
Yes, we see them.
I have a slightly different title, but it's pretty much on the same topic as thought about. So yeah, my name is Amir. I work as a professor, and today I'm going to speak a little bit about my projects and my research interest on immersive learning environments. A little bit about me: I'm a professor, docent, and I'm a scientific lead of a group called Digital Technologies for Meaningful Practices. My research, as you can see, spans from VR to work integrated learning, design science, and many things. But mainly I'm in the field of information systems, doing research in the intersection of design, meaning making, and some other stuff. So the background towards this talk is pretty much rooted in the resurgence, so to speak, of extended reality technologies such as VR, augmented reality, mixed reality. And these technologies are quite similar, but also different. For instance, if you haven't used any of these, I can tell you that VR is more immersive, known for being immersive, that when you put on VR headsets, you suspend the environments, you only get the virtual environment to interact with, whereas augmented reality, you can add layers of virtual objects to the physical environment in a display, and mixed reality is a mix of both. But my research has mainly been about VR or immersive VR, and generally speaking, these kind of technologies have become increasingly accessible and practicable for organizations and individuals in various domains. Nevertheless, in learning, um, if you're not familiar with VR since before, you might have heard about the metaverse. At least it was a rather hot topic that emerged a couple of years ago, with the idea that we might be able to live our lives in a virtual reality and conduct our daily practices and everyday needs in that virtual reality. And there are some examples of how metaverse functioned during the pandemic, nevertheless, and how people created meaning by spending a lot of time in the virtual reality. There were also actually studies on how people fell asleep together next to each other in a virtual reality, and created meaning by doing that, complete strangers. So there are many examples of how this metaverse have come to expression, but we are not really there. We don't live solely in a virtual reality. But what we can see in research is that VR extends human capacities and possibilities for so-called embodied actions, interactions. So when we interact in a virtual reality, the stuff we do there are pretty much similar to the stuff we do in a physical material world, with the exception that you can break some of the physical rules in virtual reality and get away with it. You can, for instance, jump down from a tall building without losing your life, or you can walk through doors and walls and many of these kind of stuff. But there are also studies that show how the actions you conduct in virtual reality actually affects you and your behavior in the physical world. So the virtual reality is not a isolated place; it's a coextensive space, which is a relationship between physical and virtual worlds. So my research and many of the research I've been engaging with in information systems emphasizes this centrality of immersion and immersive experiences. And so what is immersion? Because it's such a central thing of VR and extended reality technologies. So Milgram and Kishino from 94 provided this continuum, which you can see in the figure, that the more virtual you go, the more immersive it becomes. But there are also things in between, such as the mixed reality that extends our reality. But basically, you have the physical world, which is the reality, and you have the augmented version of it, and you have the mixed and virtual version of it. But characterizing immersion is basically that you feel a sense of being there in a virtual world through embodiment, or a sense of embodiment, which you can know pretty much where you are through a sense of location. Sense of agency allows you to act and interact, and you might also start connecting with that virtual body of yours. And this has given rise to many interesting concepts, such as the quantified self, the embodied screen, and ideas regarding re-embodiment, so to speak. You embody other kind of bodies than human ones, such as trees or fantastical figures, aliens and stuff like that. But to break this down a little bit more technically, immersion, when we talk about it in say from a technical perspective, it's very much about the sensory fidelity and to provide a perceptual coherence of what you see in the virtual world, the surrounding, the environment, the virtual objects, the things you can interact with. And this gives you a feeling of being present. Then, of course, there are some philosophical ideas around this. David Chalmers wrote a book called Reality Plus, which is very much about becoming absorbed by this virtual reality as if it was as real as the physical one. So there are, these kind of discussions: what is real, what is not, etc. And I've been writing a couple of articles about that in philosophical magazines as well. But its historical roots can be actually dated back to early ideas of sensorama and virtual environments, where you can see a continuation of modernity's so-called idea of how we can live inside a dream and how we can accomplish mastery through reproduction of our reality in a virtual space. So virtual reality from that sense would become the ultimate mirror or representation of what we know and what we can do in our physical reality. And as you can see, there are these early devices or versions of devices from these pictures you can look at. If we talk about immersion, for instance, the picture to the right with the person who is putting the head inside that machine, that's an early prototype of suspending the environment, so to speak. Today you do it through these head-mounted devices instead, such as um, Meta's Oculus, HTC Vive, and Pickle, etc. So you can see that the prototyping of these devices have been ongoing to accomplish even immersive experience. In my field, in our field of information systems, we are not only interested in the technical aspects of new technologies such as VR, but we are also dealing with the socio-technical ones. So socio-technical basically means the relationship between social systems that are, organizations, communities, practices, and technical systems. So it is the relationship we study. And a socio-technical narrative for VR would, of course, include the technical aspects of virtual reality, but also how it creates meaning or value for human beings in their lives and work, etc. So moving away from hardware to haptics and also talk about realism has allowed us to also measure certain kind of effects of virtual reality. And that also has led to refinement of the technical aspects of virtual reality, such as resolution, latency, and etc. But this underlying assumption that realistic experiences can be simulated is still something which virtual reality technology holds on to. But realism is not only today about, giving an accurate and precise image of how the physical world or environments, phenomenon, physical world looks like, but it is also about exploring more possibilities of how social or cultural realism can be mediated in virtual reality, such as learning history or experimenting with cultural ideas in a safe environment. So a socio-technical narrative here take these different kind of realisms into consideration. And that's where immersive learning environments come into the picture as a way of mediating meaning making for such symbiosis. So immersive learning environments, in one sense, the idea is not so new, depending on how we define immersion, because outside of human computer interaction and information systems, there are these other definitions of immersion. Nevertheless, in educational psychology and educational science, where the feeling of becoming absorbed is still possible without having a headset or technology that mediates it. Immersion can happen through really intense activities when you're fully focused and absorbed into the activity. And learning is one such activity. So in education, immersion has meant something else before, but now we can see that the the definitions are touching each other. So today, immersive learning environments is very much about the, of course, technical component, which is either of one of these extended reality technologies. You need to have some kind of educational framework or design and strategy, and also the interaction that happens in these environments. Of course, if you're using VR, you have certain way of interacting with the environments as opposed to, say, a non-immersive virtual reality solution such as desktop VR. But then it's not really immersive in that sense anymore. But research on immersive learning environments, recent research, depicts different themes for like what are the pros of using these kind of environments, and it ranges from, as you can see in the table, increased accessibility to changing human behavior, collaboration, but also perspective switching, seeing the invisible, like visualizing very abstract phenomena is possible in virtual reality, phenomena that are abstract and difficult to grasp on only through classroom teachings or traditional mediums. So yeah, there's a lot of things happening and going on here with immersive learning environments, storytelling, etc. But my interest for immersive learning environments and how we can use them are about meaning making. And because I combine my uh, interest for research in virtual reality with phenomenology and use that as a way of theorizing around meaning and meaning making, I think it's worth to say a couple of words about what my theoretical grounding is. And not to go too deep into this, but phenomenology is the tradition within philosophy that are interested in experiences and phenomena that emerge in our experience. So Husserl, who was the father of phenomenology, said that when we are going to inquire the world, we should start from our experiences, because that's also where we find meaning. So meaning here, according to phenomenology, is constituted. It is shaped in our experiences. But there's also this idea of intentionality, that when you think about meaning, it is meaning of something, meaning in something, meaning for something. So there's a direction. So meaning doesn't stand for itself, or meanings in plural. So there's a relation between your thoughts, meaning, your actions, the world, etc. And this can be found in your experience of the world. So that's what constitution means, and intentionality. On the other hand, Don Eide, which is a pragmatist researcher, he took Husserl's idea and developed a post-phenomenological program where he also incorporated technology, because technology is something which philosophers haven't dealt so much with until later times. But Don Eide and others in philosophy of technology start talking about mediation. Like, it's not only constitution when we talk about meaning, but meaning can be mediated through technology, because technology plays such a huge role in how we understand the world today. So our understanding is co-shaped by technologies, according to Eide. Okay, so when he was talking about this, he got an idea that what if technologies and their use can be understood very differently, one and the same technology, depending on how we perceive the world. And how we perceive the world is, of course, affected by our cultural understanding, our background, and many things, right? So a very mundane example is the umbrella. You can perceive it as standard way of protecting yourself against the sun or the rain, but it can also be a rudimentary weapon. There are historical examples of that, where umbrellas have been used to poke people's eyes out and stuff like that. But also the totem pole, it's a devotional device in one culture, but it can easily become the object of museum exposition in another. So there are always different perspectives of how we perceive the use of technology, and this gives us a freedom to imagine new ways of using technology. So I use this way of thinking in my research about immersive learning environments, and try to figure out what is the multistability of these and how can multi-stable meaning making arise. And that's where empirical cases become important when you do post-phenomenology. So now I'm going to share then my research cases with you. In total, there are 3 cases I will talk about today. Some of them are completed, some of them are undergoing, and some of them have just started. So categorically speaking, 2 of the cases are about skills acquisition with immersive learning environments, and the other one is more about civic orientation with immersive learning environments, which I will mention shortly. The infrastructure and organization which facilitates these cases are, of course, within University West, with a specific focus on our research environments, but also the Open Lab that has been helpful to provide technologies and resources for implementing the projects. And in my projects, I have plenty of senior researchers, teachers, PhD students. We've also had bachelor students and master students on board, and our different companies which we've been working with. So, with that said, let's start with the first case, which is about fire safety training with immersive virtual reality as the immersive learning environment. So this case started just after the pandemic, I would say. Or we started the case prior to the pandemic, but because of the pandemic, we had to stop it, pause it, and then we resurrected it once we could. And the need for this case came from SJ, which is Sweden's largest train operating company. They wanted to transit from physical fire safety training to virtual one and explore the possibilities. And in doing so, they were in collaboration with a company called Wobbling, which is still around. They develop fire safety trainings. And I can actually show you a little bit of a clip here. As you can see, this is the immersive learning environment, which Wobbling developed during this case. As you can see, there's something burning over there inside a train. And the train is a direct replica of a real train, so to speak, from SJ, a real model. So we wanted to have a direct representation of a real train in order to increase familiarity with the surrounding and the training experience. And here the idea was to provide some kind of representational realism, because that's important for embodying procedural skills. So procedural skills basically means that you want to learn how to go from point A to point D through point B and C in a sequence. And then you want to repeat this in order for your body to learn these skills and apply it in a real world setting. So we did a couple of case studies around this. I was highly involved in evaluating the virtual reality environment. And the meaning making here was very much about amplifying sensomotoral functions in the body. So as you can see in the picture to the left, one of the participants is both using the VR headset, but also a replica of the fire extinguisher, which was connected to the virtual environment to pretty much act a similar way as you do in a real setting, with an exception that you can teleport yourself in a virtual reality and you don't smell the fire, but you can hear it. And on top of this, there were some interesting moments of reflection around the meaning making part. If you look at the picture in the middle, you can see that the hose is almost inverting towards the person who's holding it. It's not pointing forward, whereas in the picture to the left, the person is holding the replica pointed forward, directing it to the fire. So what happened here was a glitch. The hose in the virtual environment was inverted. The hose in the physical environment was directed correctly. But the participant didn't really think about this. And why is that? Because the participant could still extinguish the fire, even though the water in the virtual environment was very much directed towards them. So that was a glitch, and I thought that was an interesting point to reflect upon, like what the representation or realism of how the host function was not in the foreground, was the activity, what they were learning. That's where meaning was actually being embodied, not so much that the host was to be correctly mirroring the physical one. Another very different case, which we have been dealing with for 3 years soon. It's also with SJ. We will end this project in May 26, and this is very much different than the previous one, because now suddenly we want to see how can SJ personnel learn conflict management, and it's a very different thing to deal with fire than with people. So we have been exploring this so-called ticketing experience on board trains. How can we prepare train personnel to manage conflicts that are related to ticketing scenarios? So ticketing basically means if somebody doesn't have a ticket or refuse to buy a ticket, etc., how should you manage that aboard a train? And this environment is very different than the previous one. Here we have virtual avatars, which are actually behaving in certain ways that are quite similar to real world scenarios. And you can also see that the environment outside the train is based on real environments. We want to capture that part. But here the interaction is very much with boxes that provides you prompts to how to interact with these virtual avatars. So if you, for instance, do something which they don't like, they might become aggressive, and then you have to find a way to cope with that. Proximity and distance, physically, bodily speaking to the characters might, something which you learn, etc. So there is a notion of embodiment here which is different than the previous one. Here is more about social realism and how to deal with these scenarios. And how we can embody skills, soft skills that allow you to understand the behavior of passengers and how to act upon different situations to dissolve and de-escalate the conflicts. And my colleague in the middle there is wearing a suit. It's a so-called motion capture suit, which is synchronized with Unreal Engine and the environment we use to develop these virtual scenarios. So the colleague basically can move, and then the system registers his movements, and that is then embodied into these avatars. In this project, I also have two PhD candidates. One of them is Jessica Tendi, who is more looking into the design aspects of immersive learning environments. He's using gamification as a way to understand how these immersive learning environments can be used for safety training that is integrated with the user's work practices. And Darmin is more looking into how avatars can be used to create meaning through perspective taking. So the same scenario you watched before now is seen from a different perspective. Now you can see it from a secondary avatar's perspective. So the character here with the suit, that's the character who was we saw in the previous video within the body of the character. But now this other character here, the avatar, gets a perspective from what is happening in the environment, and can observe and take notes and follow and shadow the. So it's more about how we can create meaning in a collaborative way together with each other in the same environment and look at the situation differently. And the purpose behind this is to not only consider this kind of learning as an isolated activity, but this is something which SJ personnel can train, and then they will have a group discussion and reflect upon it together with instructors and other colleagues. So there's a context which this kind of technology is embedded in. And finally, The last case, which is ongoing, started April 2025, is about immersive civic orientation with immersive learning environments. And this is a very different case than the other two. So while the first one was about learning procedural skills and the second is about learning soft skills, this is about learning sociocultural knowledge, basically. Civic orientation is today a part of newcomers and the third national citizens integration process in Sweden. You need to attend 100 or 120 hours of civic orientation in order to get some social support and stuff like that.
Amir, I'm really sorry. You're having dropouts when it comes to sound. It comes and goes. Could you please speak as close as possible to the microphone?
Yes, is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So sorry for that. No, I was saying that civic orientation is a part of the integration process in Sweden. And in this project, we initially, my colleague and I, who see in the picture, Clara, conducted a 1-year pilot study when we explored what the possibilities and challenges are with using virtual reality technology for helping civic orientation learners and teachers. And this then led to a 3-year project, which we are doing together with Göteborg Stad, the municipality of Gothenburg. And the project is funded by EU and the Swedish Migration Center. More specifically, as I said, we were looking into the socio-cultural realism, which is very much about learning topics and themes about the Swedish society that are part of the culture and society in Sweden. But more, we specifically focus on developing virtual worlds that mediate experiences about freedom of speech and learning how to protect yourself against discrimination in Sweden. So idea is to develop 2 virtual worlds that accomplish this, and we want to then evaluate these together with teachers and different groups of newcomers in civic orientation. And what I can see here is the potential for meaning making through a heavy sense of perspective taking, where users might experience freedom of speech from very different perspectives, depending on their backgrounds and their life world in terms of religion, value systems, etc. But still, we want them to learn these topics as a part of their civic orientation. And my PhD student Elif has started her PhD since end of last year, close to end of last year, and she's doing her PhD on studying how multimodal feedback mechanisms can be used for perspective taking of meaning and civic orientation. And we are in the beginning of this project. So we have developed a conceptual design around this world and narratives, etc., which we want to realize into virtual reality solutions later. So these were the cases. Now some reflections then. So when it comes to meaning making, what I have learned is that from these different cases, that there are different ways you can understand meaning and meaning making. From the fire safety case, for instance, the mode of meaning making is very much about embodying meaningful knowledge, a corporeal awareness, so to speak, which is very much what the body feels and what the body registers. The conflict management case is that, as well as other more relational, ethical aspects to meaning, like what does it mean to establish proximity, a distance to an aggressive passenger. Or I can tell you another anecdote, like one of the practitioners from SJ, when we did a field study on the prototype, that practitioner told us that the virtual aggressor, has a wrong shoe collar, because usually shoe collars have their meanings in these situations for SJ personnel. So you can see that meaning is situated also in their practices. And the shoe collar can indicate that this person might be an aggressor, in one sense. So it's difficult to generalize meaning from that since it's relational. And in civic orientation, I think that the intercultural meaning is something we have to explore in an open way. So multi-stability here, then thinking in terms of that allows you to accomplish variation in the mediation process. Same technology is mediating very different kind of experiences. And meaning making here, I think, also is very much about taking perspectives, because that's something research tells us in virtual reality today, that it's when we talk about perspective taking today, it's not only about imagining someone else's perspective, but you can get an actual visual experience that symbolizes that perspective, and this brings us a little bit closer to understanding how one can see situations from other people's point of views. And therefore, I would say it's beyond only representations in virtual reality. Representation captures one aspect of providing a sense of realism, but collaborative meaning making also affords this social realism part. So designing such environments is complex. You need to design pedagogical design, the socio-technical, the interaction design. But also with AI, you have to have some kind of ethical considerations around this. There are cases where dead people have been resurrected into virtual environments without ethical consents. And this is, of course, not okay, but they've been so for learning purposes. And in my own research, I'm rethinking immersion, embodiment, and also writing about this coextensive space. And speaking about the coextensive space, so that happened by accident, actually. I didn't see that coming. It was at the Apple Center in New York. I was testing the Apple Vision and drawing, extracting components of a car and dropping it off. And suddenly somebody in the physical world shows up. And that reminded me where I was. With that said, I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you for listening. This is the team that have been involved in my projects so far. And here are some publications that I have together with my colleagues, and some other references if somebody wants to look into that later on. So that's pretty much what I had to share today.
Okay, thank you very much, Amir, for this very interesting talk and sharing your knowledge about the experiences and the challenges, and not least the thinking behind when it comes to theory and these three practical projects that you have been working on with some insights and knowledge. By this, I would like to open up the floor if there are any questions or any comments that you want to make on this, or have a dialogue with Amir. You're able to at this time. So please, are there anyone who wants to ask or comment on anything? I don't see any hands. Then I could start up, Amir. I was thinking about that it's very much about the people going into worlds like that, using the technology and how they think about and perceive technology, how they actually do they think it's something positive? Do they think that that they are forced into do this? I would say that it would be different from the when it comes to the train metaphor, or the people training there, they will do this as part of development, but they could be different in different situation. Do you have any thoughts about the people's mindset and their positivity or negativity towards using the technology, and how that affects the outcome of actually doing things in the virtual world or in an immersive environment?
Yeah, I mean, there are partially many studies reporting variation of how people feel about doing training and learning with this kind of technology, but my own studies as well. And it varies depending on the content, I would say, of the training. For instance, the fire safety training is a very short scene. You do it and you repeat it, and usually you have some kind of experience of that training in SJ, at least, because they've done some kind of physical training around this. So they have something to compare with. But the conflict management case is a bit different because SJ personnel didn't have anything besides theory in terms of practicing conflict management. And many of these virtual reality experiences, generally speaking, can be quite overwhelming for people who haven't had immersive experiences. So one has to, I think, be cautious about how interaction plays out, so it doesn't come across as very extreme or radical for a person, especially if they've had some kind of critical experience of conflicts on board a train. And this kind of tool is used a way to bring them back without too much affection. I think one has to be a little bit empathetic about how the content plays out. But generally speaking, I would say that the reactions I've seen are positive, and there's a curiosity, a constant curiosity of how we can integrate these kind of technologies into educational platforms and accomplish some kind of knowledge transfer or skill transfer from virtual environments to physical ones and vice versa.
Thank you very much, Amir.
Oh.
Anybody else that has any question or comment to Amir about?
Just a reflection, maybe a question. But you talked about that incident where one of the trainees said that the aggressor in the VR environment had the wrong color on the shoes. And I can't, I think it's called something uncanny. There is a theory in film, at least, where you sort of leave out details in the film because the things we can create in our head is much more imaginative than what they can depict on screen. Now, is that something you could apply? And I think it should be, but have you thought about if that is something you can apply in virtual realities as well to make the virtual realities become more real so that the participants sort of fill in from their own mind and their own experiences to make it a more immersive and real experience?
Oh, that's a super good question. I think the phenomenon you're thinking about the uncanny valley.
Yeah, uncanny valley, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's a pretty common phenomenon, I would say, VR as well, which has been studied. Um, let me see if I understand the question correctly. So, did you ask like if it's possible to bring in your own imagination and make it real in the VR? Or
Yeah, because for the example with the shoes, you had chosen a color, but maybe you could choose a gray color or so leave more rooms for the participants to fill in details. So to have details that hints that there is a shoe there, but the details of the shoe and the color of the shoes, you can sort of fill in yourself.
Yeah, I mean I think that's what we did in early versions of this prototype. We created more of a space where you could explore very fundamental things that are still meaningful in a conflict situation and leaving out information of that sort, so to speak. But the more we try to represent uh, real situations that have been reported to incident reports, for instance, at SJ. So we use that as a way to underpin the design process. I think the more information we added, but I see where you're going with this. It's a very good comment. I will take that with me actually. Yeah, it's a cool. I think there's something to that. Doing that, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And any other questions or comments to Amir or what he has presented about his research and the projects? Okay, if not, I could continue with another one. I was thinking it's perhaps a bit premature, depending on what on the projects and the experiences gained from using this in augmented reality, virtual reality, compared to the trainings been done before. I know that many situations is not possible to do in real life, but it's possible to do in virtual reality. But like you talked about, like for the fire training on the trains, that they used to do something before that was not mediated by technology or in do you have any thoughts about the differences? How do people learn more or better, or is it too early to say about if it supports the understanding and learning and goes beyond when it comes to knowledge, if you support this with technology like you're doing in this project?
Yeah, so I can share a couple of insights from that case. One insight was, of course, that the organization saw this as a more sustainable form of training because you reduce potential injuries, pollution, and stuff like that. Another insight was that participants felt spatially disoriented in the virtual environment, some of them. For instance, even if we had a correct representation of a train, the ceiling was very close to someone's sense of embodiment, for instance. It was very close to the face, head inside a virtual environment. And that affected their overall training experience. Or this notion of teleportation, of course, reduces bodily movement and how you engage with fire in a situation which might be really dangerous. So the sense of danger, sense of fear, was very different for the participants in a virtual environment because they also knew that this is not for real, so to speak. There's not a real fire, but I have to learn how to use this fire extinguisher. So that's the main point, how to point it, how to push it. And there's some resistance to it, and it weighs pretty much the same. So we got that replica. But I think in many of these situations, when you know that it's not for real, your mind works in a different way. But at the same time, there are studies that show people that are very sensitive to sensory information that they might experience something that is close to a traumatic experience in VR as well. So the realism is still there, but you know that I will not get burned by this fire, but it's still something that makes me scared, you know? So that kind of stuff was appreciated. And also the very fact that you can repeat this kind of training, independent of coordinating a place, time, event, group of people and all that, reduces a lot of costs and money. So from an organizational point of view, they thought that this might be a way to replace the traditional form of physical fire safety training.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Amir. On my own side, I think I'm very much more in. I'm the most important, or the thing that interests me most is the human and their thinking and their acceptance and how they think about using the technology, how they that would actually, their interaction with the technology and how they learn and how they act depending on what they do in this kind of mediated words, that's very, very interesting, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, are there more or other questions or remarks? If not, thank you again very, very much, Amir, for your very interesting talk and presentation on the topic and the projects and your experiences here. It's been a lovely hour to learn a little bit more and see what you're doing and understand a little bit more. So thank you again very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And before we'll close the session, this webinar today, I like to inform you that, as we said in the beginning, this is one in a long row of interesting talks, webinars that we hold within the Challenge Lab of the STARS EU Alliance, as this was the 23rd. The 24th will be in March. Actually on March 31. Normally it's in the middle or a little bit after middle of it in the mid month, but this time, due to that, we have the yearly conference in the our alliance when it was supposed to have it's a week later. So on Tuesday, March 31st, 1 p.m. Central European time, we will have a new talk, and we're going from in different directions. We're going from digital and augmented reality, virtual reality into other topics. It will be the thematic group of inclusion and social justice that does this talk. And it will be on gender-based and sexual violence, and presented by Fabienne Thérin from University of Marie-Louis Pasteur in France, that will give that talk on March 31st. So you are all most welcome to attend that one, and there will be other ones in April, May, and June as well. It will be all advertised through the webpage and the social media for the STARS EU Alliance. So by that, I thank you all for participation, and once again, thank you very much, Amir, for your presentation and sharing of knowledge. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.